Yes, Prabhuji, we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is the disappearance of Lord Krishna, and today we are on text 34.
Okay. Bhagavan api Govindo Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsalah Kachit Pure Sudharmayam Sukamaste Suridvrataha. Translation. Is Lord Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives pleasure to the cows, the senses, and the Brahmins, who is very affectionate toward his devotees, enjoying the pious assembly at Dwarkapuri, surrounded by his friends. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here in this particular verse, the Lord is described as Bhagavan, Govinda, Brahmanya, and Bhaktivatsala. He is Bhagavan Swayam, or the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, full with all opulences, all power, all knowledge, all beauty, all fame, and all renunciation. No one is equal to or greater than him. He is Govinda because he is the pleasure of the cows and the senses. Those who have purified their senses by devotional service of the Lord can render unto him real service and thereby derive transcendental pleasure out of such purified senses. Only the impure, conditioned living being cannot derive any pleasure from the senses, but being illusioned by false pleasures of the senses, he becomes servant of the senses. Therefore, we need his protection for our own interest. The Lord is the protector of the cows and the Brahminical culture. A society devoid of cow protection and Brahminical culture is not under the direct protection of the Lord, just as the prisoners in the jails are not under the protection of the king, but under the protection of a severe agent of the king. Without cow protection and cultivation of Brahminical qualities in human society, at least for a section of the members of society, no human civilization can prosper at any length. By Brahminical culture, the development of the dormant qualities of goodness, namely truthfulness, equanimity, sense control, forbearance, simplicity, general knowledge, transcendental knowledge, and firm faith in the Vedic wisdom, one can become a Brahmin and thus see the Lord as he is. And after surpassing the Brahminical perfection, one has to become a devotee of the Lord, so that his loving affection in the form of proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover can be transcendently achieved. The stage of a devotee, which attracts the transcendental affection of the Lord, does not develop unless one has developed the qualities of a Brahmin, as above mentioned. The Lord is inclined to a Brahmin of quality and not of false prestige. Those who are less than a Brahmin by qualification cannot establish any relation with the Lord, just as fire cannot be kindled from the raw earth unless there is wood, although there is a relation between the wood and the earth. Since the Lord is all perfect in himself, there could not be any question of his welfare, and Maharaj Yudhisthira refrained from asking this question. He simply inquired about his residential place, Dwarkapuri, where pious men assemble. The Lord stays only where pious men assemble and takes pleasure in their glorifying the supreme truth. Maharaj Yudhisthira was anxious to know about the pious men and their pious acts in the city of Dwarka. Om Jnana Timanandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshar Unmaditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Maharaj Yudhisthira is continuing with his inquiries from Arjuna about what happened when he was on his journey back from Dwarka. And we see from Srila Prabhupada's purport, practically every line of Prabhupada's purport, we could give a lecture on it. But he starts off pointing out, as Prabhupada does, about the different ways and means that Krishna is addressed in this verse. So many names for Krishna are given: Bhagavan, Govinda, Brahmanya, and Bhaktavatsala. Bhagavan Swayam, indicating he is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are so many incarnations of Godhead. There are so many avatars, but Krishna is the original. And we know from the verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the last line is Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. It can be a little bewildering. There's so many aspects of Vishnu. There are so many aspects of different personalities of the Supreme Lord. And it can be at times a little bewildering to try to figure it all out, especially when we're new to the scriptures, we're new to the devotional creeper that we're trying to develop. But Prabhupada points out on practically every page of his purports, of his books, that Krishna is the origin. He is the source of all the incarnations. And Prabhupada goes on to say, there is no equal to or greater than him. He is Govinda because he is the pleasure of the cows and the senses. So this is the ultimate pleasure, the only pleasure. In fact, I was listening to a lecture from Srila Prabhupada the other day, and he was saying, it's not in our own self-interest to try to take shelter in the senses. Of course, the senses are there. We can't ignore them. And the demands of the senses are there. And if we try to suppress it, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, what can suppression accomplish? Absolutely nothing. So there's the recognition that the senses are there, but it's how to engage the senses in the service of the Supreme Lord. Another name for Krishna, of course, is Rishikesh. He's the master of the senses. So if we take shelter of the holy name, we take shelter of Krishna, and everything else falls into place. Prabhupada says, those who are purified their senses by the devotional service of the Lord can render unto him real service and thereby derive transcendental pleasure out of such purified senses. So this is a very interesting line. There's so much information loaded in every single line of Prabhupada's purports. But this particular purport, it really struck me today when I was reading it. Those who have purified senses by the devotional service of the Lord. So this is the secret, although it's not really a secret. The 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is described as being the most confidential knowledge. So how can it be confidential? What is the meaning of the word confidential in this particular instance? We have distributed millions, hundreds of millions of Bhagavad Gitas all over the world in so many languages by the BBT since Srila Prabhupada first published his book, his Bhagavad Gita as it is, published by Macmillan, and then later on by the BBT when we got the rights to publish it ourselves. But how on earth can the 9th chapter be described as confidential? Because it needs the mercy of the Guru to unlock this veil of the material consciousness, which is there before us, blinding us to the real consciousness, which we have to penetrate through this material fog in order to get to the ultimate source. And that's where we can engage the senses. And Prabhupada is saying here, those who have purified senses by the devotional service of the Lord. The secret is rendering service. That is always the case, regardless of our position. Of course, there's so much descriptions here in this purport about the qualification of the Brahminical culture and who was qualified as a Brahmin and who was not qualified as a Brahmin. And Prabhupada goes into a lot of detail here. But it's to establish the culture of the Brahminical culture. This is the essence. And again, as I mentioned the other day, I was reading Govinda Das's book, which just came out. And again, this is 1967, 1968, of which her book is covering that period of time in the very early days of ISKCON in San Francisco and New York. Her Prabhupada was explaining to his new initiates, and he was pretty strong in the way in which he would chastise them when they made a mistake. And because Prabhupada said over and over again, we have to establish the culture, the Brahminical culture of Krishna consciousness. There's a whole culture that goes around it, which is something that I'm very grateful to the experience that I had when I was in East Africa, particularly in Kenya, when I was serving there, how I was able to see on a daily basis the culture of Krishna consciousness, and how most of the people, even if they weren't performing as Vaishnavas or they weren't performing as devotees, still everything was centered around the culture. I used to notice particularly everybody would go into their office in the morning or go into their factory or whatever, no matter who they were, no matter how they may be going to the nightclub, they may be going to this club and that club and drinking and so many things, but they would go in and they would offer their agarbati, they would offer their diwa in the morning in their little picture, whatever it was. Everybody was, at least the consciousness was there, that it was centered around the ultimate goal of life. It may have been somewhat removed from the activities that we find ourselves engaged in, those who are living full time in a temple, but nonetheless, it was there. And I can recall how the first time when I was in the early days in Kisumu with a devotee called Ramakeli, a big black-bodied devotee from Chicago, who was one of the first devotees I traveled with in the very early 80s in throughout East Africa. We went to Uganda also, and it was a completely crazy place. Of course, it's still a crazy place, but in those days it was like mad. But we would cross the border, and Ramakeli, he didn't speak, although he was black, very tall. He must have been nearly 7 feet tall. From Chicago, as I said. He didn't speak a single word of Swahili, although he'd been there longer than me. Somehow or other, I picked up a few words here and there. And at the border crossings, the Askaris would get very angry. And they talked to him in Swahili, and I would have to answer because and they thought he was just being puffed up, that he didn't want to answer in Swahili. He would answer them in English, and they'd get the bunduki and point the bunduki through the window of the pickup and start threatening us. But one of the first things I experienced in Kisumu, we were staying in the Hindu Union Temple, and it was around Shivaratri or one of those big occasions when the children had a Rangoli competition, and they invited us to come and participate and be the judges of this Rangoli competition. And I hadn't a clue even what Rangoli was. I didn't even know what it was. But I was introduced to the culture of these amazing designs and beautiful colored patterns that the children had created. And here were the people showing me respect because I was in a dhoti and inviting me to come and be the judge. I just joined the day before, become a devotee from long hair and hippie, and then the next day shaved up, and the next day in Kisumu, dancing on the street, chanting the holy names. And the people had that respect because they respected the culture. And then I was able to slowly see how it's written in Prabhupada's books, how the Brahminical culture must be established. And I was able to see it. Okay, it may have been in a a reflective way, but the culture was still very, very strong and still is strong. And that culture must be maintained, and it must be embarked upon in such a way that we can find a way somehow or other, the way Srila Prabhupada had found a way to get through to us Westerners when he came to New York, and to be able to connect in such a way that but he did it in such a way that people automatically loved him. It wasn't something that was forced. I was reading from Govinda Dasi how Prabhupada was on a morning walk in Golden Gate Park, San Francisco, and he was with Gaurasundar and a few other devotees. And then he just pointed to this tree, and he told Gaurasundar, "Can you go over there and get me some twigs from that tree quickly, before the park Ascaris can see you?" So Gaurasundar went over and cut a whole bunch of branches from the tree and brought them back. Nobody had a clue why Prabhupada wanted these. And Prabhupada said, "Oh yes, these made very good toothbrush." So we hadn't a clue. Toothbrush from a twig, from a tree. Of course, he said, "These are not the best." He said, "But they're good." They were eucalyptus. It was a eucalyptus tree. And Prabhupada immediately on the spot, he took one of the devotees' penknife and he cut the bark off it, and he chewed it, and he made the end of the twig into a little toothbrush, and showed the devotees how on the spot how to brush and use their teeth. He said, your plastic toothbrushes, they're completely Kali Yuga, completely unhygienic. They don't clean at all. You use the same thing every day and it becomes contaminated. Prabhupada used to say the mouth is dirtier than the anus. So again, it's a small thing, toothbrush. What is it? But it's a part of the whole culture. Cleanliness is next to godliness. We have to be suchi. So that was one of the things, a very basic thing that Prabhupada introduced to us in the West, how to be clean. Prabhupada had to introduce to us how to take bath, how to be clean. First thing he did was shave your head, take off all this long hair. And when the devotees later on became a little familiar with the devotional process, and then started growing their hair back again, particularly in Chaturmas, it's become a little popular even these days for devotees to grow their hair back and grow a beard and so on and so forth. Prabhupada didn't like it. He chastised them in Vrindavan. He said, "We are known as short hair. We are known as shaven head. Now I see around me so many of my disciples, they have long hair." So this is not the system. We have to maintain the standards, because we have yad acharati shreshtas. We have the responsibility. Those of us who are a little more long in the tooth and being a few years in the movement, we have the responsibility of setting the example for others. We may not be advanced, we may not be on the Brahma Bhuta stage, on the Paramahamsa, but nonetheless, because of what we've heard from Srila Prabhupada and over the years, then we have the responsibility of passing that on to others. So Prabhupada used to say, example is better than precept. It's much better to set an example than to even talk about what should be done or what should not be done. So again, in this purport, Prabhupada is saying, only the impure conditions living being cannot derive any pleasure from the senses, but being illusioned by false pleasure of the senses, he becomes a servant of the senses. Therefore, we need his protection for our own interest. So we need Krishna's protection at all times, every single moment in time. We're never independent. We're never independent of his mercy. That's why when we chant, we're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And as we know, there are so many Shaktis invested in the holy name. But Prabhupada said the summum bonum, the conclusion of the meaning of the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is what? So many times Prabhupada said it. Please, Krishna, please, dear Lord Krishna, engage me in your service. This is what we're chanting when we're doing our rounds every morning, whatever number of rounds we have committed to do. Those devotees who are initiated are committed to chanting as 16 rounds a day. Whatever number of rounds we have committed to chanting, this is what we're chanting on every single bead. Every single bead, 108 beads. We're chanting, please, please, please. It's a crying religion, as Srila Gaur Govinda Swami used to say. Please engage me in your service. This is the goal. So as we can overcome these demands of the senses. The Lord is the protector of the cows and the Brahminical culture. And this is really the next sentence brings the stark reality of modern life home to us in such a strong way. And remember, this was written in the 60s. This purports to Srila Prabhupada's first canto was written in the 60s. How long ago? And Prabhupada is saying here, the Lord is protector of the cows and Brahminical culture. A society devoid of cow protection and Brahminical culture is not under the direct protection of the Lord. So whose protection is that society under? Just as the prisoners in the jails are not under protection of the king, but under the protection of the supreme agent of the king. So the prisoners in the jail, they're certainly in the same state. They're in the same kingdom. They're living in the same kingdom, but they don't have the freedom to the degree that the people outside the prison have. And Prabhupada used to give the example, there may be in a prison some prisoners who are trusted prisoners, as Prabhupada used to describe them. Trusted in the sense that they were there for quite some time. They were given more lenient tasks to do instead of very hard labor. They may be supervising even other prisoners. They may be given more comfort or a more comfortable cell or whatever the case may be. But in the final analysis, as Prabhupada used to tell us, they're still prisoners. They may have a little carpet in their cell. They may have some pictures of their family on the wall, or they may be given a nice, sweet-smelling bar of soap that the other prisoners don't get, and comfortable, and certainly in the West, in the prisons in the West, they have a TV, they have a gym, they have all kinds of entertainment, and so on and so forth. Still, you're a prisoner. That's the bottom line. So we are prisoners. We are locked. And the death rate is still 100%. That will always be the case. That's the only way out of the prison. But we can release ourselves from that prison-like consciousness long before we leave this mortal coil and long before we reach that ultimate test in life. I was listening again to that same lecture from Prabhupada the other day, and Prabhupada was explaining, as soon as we're infected by disease, the work of the doctor, I myself was in hospital a couple of weeks ago for 3 or 4 days, and I have direct experience of this. As soon as we are infected by disease, the work of the doctor is to remove that ailment. That is his job. Similarly, as we are by our constitutional position, actually spirit souls, we can in a way consider, Prabhupada was saying, that the body is our disease, dis-ease. So it comes to there's 2 syllables there, dis-ease. We are not at ease. We cannot be at ease because this place is a place of trial and tribulation. That is always the case. It's a place of total anxiety, 24 hours a day. There's one anxiety after another. We were discussing the other day how you overcome one problem in life and then another one arises. And Brahma gives so many examples for that. Just like some religions say or they acknowledge that we have a soul. But we, in our philosophy that we've been very, very fortunate to embrace, those of us who were mostly coming in the West, coming from a Christian background. And we have this vague idea, yes, we understand it's a little bit about God, and God is mentioned here and there, but it's a very vague notion of God. God is a person. What is God like? What does he do all day? What are his activities? Prabhupada used to say, we can tell you even God's address. So you can go there and you can talk to him, you can experience him, and you can directly encounter and understand your relationship, your own individual relationship with God. It's directly there, available to everybody. But the Abrahamic traditions, as we call them, that is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, they have this vague notion that we have a soul. And it's not really go into much details about what it is, what is the soul. But as Vaishnavas, we don't put it that way. We don't say we have a soul. We understand we are a soul. We have a body. That's the difference. We reverse turn the whole thing around, turn it all on its head. So we're locked. This soul, this individual Jivatma, is encaged, imprisoned in this particular body at this point in time. Who knows what kind of a body we had in a previous life? Who knows what kind of a body we're going to get in the future? But at this point in time, we have this particular body. We have come in touch with this philosophy. We have this opportunity to break out of this cage, to break out of this imprisonment, and finally get our act together and get rid of this anxiety and go to this place of Vaikuntha, where there is no anxiety. We are pure spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. But we have become infected with this body disease. I, me, and mine. Aham, mameti. We're convinced that we're Christian, or we're Jew, or we're Muslim, or we're Hindu, or we're American, or British, or African, or whatever, because we identify with the body. We may talk till the cows come home, to coin a phrase. No, we're not the body, we're spirit, soul. We can say this, but to actually imbibe it, to take this into our hearts, and to actually put it into practice, that needs determination. It needs serious determination. It needs serious application. It just doesn't come of its own accord. By the mercy of Krishna, we get Guru. By the mercy of Guru, we get Krishna. And then we put that into practice, grab onto it and hold onto it for dear life. It's the only thing we have. There is nothing else. Everything else is a complete and total illusion. And so many bodily identifications we take with us, we carry with us, friends, society, family, so on and so forth. This is my uncle, this is my aunt, this is my mother, this is my father, these are my children, these are my sons, this is my brother, this is my sister. Yes, those relationships are there. It's not that we're denying them. It's not that we say they don't exist and that we hold them dear, those friends and family and society, that the people that we come across in our life, we hold them very dear. But we have to get past the idea that these are permanent. These are temporary. We go beyond this, completely beyond this. Our identification is, our constitutional position is with Krishna. Pure spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. We've become infected with this bodily disease from which the spiritual master, in other words, our doctor, gives us the method by which we can be cured. But when I was in the hospital, I surrendered to the hospital protocol. Naturally, I'm ill. I don't know what the cause of this disease is, but I know I'm suffering. I can feel it. I can see it. Everything around me. It's constant. The pain is there 24 hours a day. So what do? We surrender to the protocol, follow the instructions of the authorities, the nurses, the doctors, the staff. Why? because I know that they're taking care of my welfare. They're there to help me. They're there to assist me. That's with some material disease. Because I have faith in the physician that if I follow their expert guidance, I will have some relief from my immediate suffering. And I did, of course. After a few days, I came out, I was discharged and back to normal. But this immediate relief, whilst it is welcome, it cannot last. There's the ultimate test at the time of leaving the body. For that test, following any materially qualified man or women, and no matter how expert they may be, they cannot help us. It's not possible. For ultimate relief from material suffering, we have to seek shelter from the ultimate shelter, and that is Krishna, Lord Krishna or his representative. By the mercy of Krishna, one gets the spiritual master. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one gets Krishna. So why does Krishna come? Prabhupada explains again, and there's the verse in the Gita, to deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to establish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. But what is the ultimate purpose? Just like when Krishna was brought by Akrura from Vrindavan, of course, the gopis were totally distraught. How could Akrura take Krishna away from Vrindavan like that? They lay down in front of the cart, they held on to their horses, they tried to stop it in every way. Their whole lives were over. They couldn't exist, they couldn't think of existing without Krishna. So when Akrura eventually brought Krishna and Balaram to Vrindavan, it was for what purpose? To kill Kamsa. That was one purpose, and he fulfilled that. But to protect the devotee, that is his purpose. Of course, he killed so many demons in Vrindavan. Those are all described in Krishna book. And as a child, even as a child, sucking the breast of his mother, he was in a position where he was killing demons. He was still exhibiting the power of the personality of Godhead. It's not that because he was in the body, seemingly in the body of a child, that he was no longer God. He's always God. Whether he's Bal Krishna or whether he's grown up Krishna in Dwarka and taking on the role of a king, God is God. So there is no difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ancient eternal Godhead, who was foremost among all great personalities, obtained the opulence of a staunch reputation which purifies the entire universe by worshipping the feet of those Brahmins and Vaishnavas. That is a verse from the 4th canto. And here Prabhupada is talking about the Brahminical culture. Without cow protection and cultivation of Brahminical qualities in human society, at least for a section of the members, no human civilization can prosper at any length. So we may have advanced in human civilization. Certainly in the last 100 years, we have advanced tremendously. And we have advanced technologically, but at the same time as we have advanced, we're going further and further and further away from God. Completely further away from religion. And it's becoming more and more impersonal, more and more atheistic, more and more demoniac as time passes. We can see that ourselves. So, Prabhupada to say here, no human civilization can prosper at any length. What have we achieved in the last 100 years? We've had so many wars. We pollute the air. We pollute the oceans. We pollute the rivers. We pollute the soil. We pollute the water we drink, the soil we grow our food in. Everything is artificially produced, pumping more and more and more chemicals to get less and less and less. I remember when I was doing Food for Life, and I had a permit doing Food for Life in Kisumu, I had a government permit to buy in bulk from the government silos during the harvest time. I would buy maragwe, and I would buy corn and maize and all these different things that we used. I had a government permit to buy rice from the government warehouse in Ahero where they grew pishori. But I would talk to the farmers who were delivering their bulk produce to the government storehouse, the silos, and they would tell me that they were given free seed by the seed companies like Monsanto, free seed, hybrid seed. They used to have previously, their fathers and their grandfathers, they used to save the seed every year for the next plantation. When they would harvest, they would save a certain amount of seed, and then at the finish with the harvest, and then begin their planting for the next season. But then Monsanto and other groups like that, big multi corporations, they gave out free seed, hybrid seed that they would plant and guarantee that they get double the crop, which they did. So they got double the crop. But then the next year, when they went to plant from the seed from that double the crop, nothing came out because the hybrid, it doesn't work. It only works once. And then gradually, as the hybrid then was developed, and they had to go back to the Monsanto supplier, and they had to buy the seed again. So then they planted that same seed, and then the next year, instead of getting double the crop, you got 1.5 times the crop. And then as the years progressed, all the farmers told me this. As the years progressed, they were back now to the same harvest that they got when they were planting their original indigenous natural seed. And then the next year, they got 3/4 of the harvest that they got from their previous seed. So then they were saying, going back to the seed supplier and saying, well, I'm getting less harvest now than when I was planting my original indigenous seed. So what did the seed supplier say? Well, you have to put fertilizer. So then they started giving them fertilizer, selling fertilizer and this and this and this. So now they're adding fertilizer, they're having to buy seed every year, and now they're completely locked in because their original indigenous seed is gone. So this is what we call development. And it's like this not only in Kenya, it's like this the whole world over. So this is not development, polluting the air, polluting the land, polluting the soil, polluting the water, polluting the oceans, overfishing, destroying everything, microplastics everywhere. So yes, we have advanced. That is a fact. But what is the cost of this advancement? And why are we going in this direction? Because we're going completely in the opposite direction of Brahminical culture. Completely. Even as a child, me living in Ireland as a child, we had some connection with Brahminical culture. Of course, we didn't call it that, but everything was centered around church. Everything was centered around church activities. Everything was natural. There was respect for elders, so on and so forth. There wasn't this demoniac, and that is in my lifetime. There wasn't this demoniac culture that we see today. Why are we saying this? Why are we pointing this out? Why am I emphasizing this? Because it's up to us, those of us who have taken on, to whatever extent we've taken on this philosophy as given to us by Srila Prabhupada. We have a great responsibility to set the example in our own small way for others to follow, so others can take also. We have to spread this message. And to do that, we have to start thinking about the elephant in the room that we're all avoiding, those of us in ISKCON, that we're just avoiding it. The last part of the whole puzzle that we're avoiding to set into place, and that is Varnashram. We have to do it. And the whole Brahminical culture is a part of that. It's all very well, and it's fantastic that we've opened so many centers all over the world. We have expanded. We have made so many more new devotees since Srila Prabhupada departed. We've made tens of thousands of devotees everywhere, all over the world. But the impact we have on the general society is minuscule. Yes, we have an impact within our own little circle. And our own little circle is big. It's big to our vision. The whatever 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 followers that we have around the globe, perhaps. And that's great. And nobody is decrying that achievement. That achievement is fantastic. But now we have to get back to the basics and establish the Brahminical culture in whatever way we can. So whoever we meet, we have to do this service for Prabhupada. It's difficult. Nobody's saying it's easy. How do we go about it? Who knows? How do we implement it? Who knows? But we have to figure out a way from the top to the bottom. In our own little way, we have to figure out some way of pushing this through so everybody can gain from this, because the planet is suffering. Prabhupada has given us the panacea. Prabhupada has given us the method by which this suffering can stop. It can stop. And to a certain extent, certainly it has stopped for us, for those of us who have been fortunate enough to embrace this. But then look at the mercy that Prabhupada showed to the devotees when he left Vrindavan and went to a horrible place like New York and Boston, and just went down to the Lower East Side of New York, a place that is very much gentrified today. But years ago, when Prabhupada was there in 1966, it was a ghetto, a dump. So now it's gentrified. But in those days, it was the worst possible place you could live, you could think of. And Prabhupada, as you know, from reading the Leela Amrita, those of you who've read it, Prabhupada's typewriter was stolen. His typewriter, when there was nobody there, his typewriter was stolen, and the manuscript for the Bhagavad Gita was stolen. The entire manuscript. He had to start all over again and start at the beginning. So anybody would have given up. And Prabhupada is describing again in the Leela Amrita how every month, practically speaking, when he was alone, before he had any followers, any disciples, he would go down to the shipping company in the harbor, in New York Harbor, and he would inquire, when's the next ship going back to India? He was so desperate. And nothing was working. Absolutely nothing was working. But then look, from that determination, Prabhupada was able to establish this wonderful, wonderful movement all over the world. So now we don't want to come in on, on the back of that and now rest easy and rest on our laurels. I'm preaching to myself here, and it's not that I'm talking to all the people who are participating here. I'm preaching to myself. We really have to establish this Brahminical culture. We have to get through to the people that matter. We have to get through to those who count, and really direct everything to those who can make a difference. What is that verse? Satatam kirtiyanto mam yatantascha dridavrata. With determination. It takes a lot of determination. It takes serious determination to be able to take on and put this philosophy into practice in our own lives. Now we're hearing we have the responsibility of passing it on to others. And we do have that responsibility. It is our legacy. Prabhupada has given so much. As Prabhupada used to say, we are spending gallons of blood to make one devotee. Gallons of blood we are spending to make one devotee. So now when we get that person, we have to utilize the energy, the abilities. Everybody has an ability. Everybody has their own individual ability. And we have to apply it. It's wonderful that, we're going through the motions. We're chanting our rounds. We're attending programs. We're attending classes like this. We're attending classes in the temple. so on and so forth. But let us not be creepiness. Let us not be misers. Let us give this as much as possible to others, insofar as it is within our power to do so. Prabhupada is saying in another verse how Lord Krishna he used to bow down to four different people. When Lord Sri Krishna was in Dwarka, he offered his respects by bowing down at the lotus feet of Narada. Imagine Narada used to visit Krishna in Dwarka, just like Narada visited Srila Prabhupada in London. When Sudama Vipra came to his house, Lord Krishna personally washed his feet and gave him a seat on his personal bed. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhisthira and Queen Kunti. The Lord's exemplary behavior is to teach us. It's to teach us how we should behave. So Krishna did it. Prabhupada, what did Prabhupada do with the first Rath Yatra? You remember from the Lilamrita? When all the devotees are chanting, and when the Rath Yatra really took off, the one that Jayananda made the Rath cart, not the one on the flatbed truck, but the first one where it was with a real Rath cart. And there's that famous video clip, excuse me, from that video of the Rath Yatra, when Prabhupada stood up and he's throwing out the roses into the crowd. Somebody gave him a bunch of roses and he's throwing, and the crowd is going wild, absolutely wild. And Prabhupada finally threw the whole bunch of roses into the crowd. People were grabbing at the roses to get them. These are people who didn't know anything about Krishna. What did Prabhupada do at that Rath Yatra? It was a momentous occasion. The Krishna book just arrived straight from the printer in boxes. Prabhupada immediately tore open the boxes of Krishna book at the Rath Yatra in front of a crowd of thousands of people and went down into the crowd and sold books. He sold the books at the Rath Yatra because he saw the long term. Yes, people are dancing, people are chanting, people are enjoying the Rath Yatra. It was fantastic occasions, complete Vaikuntha. Prabhupada was jumping up in the air, dancing like anything. Same when he came to London at the Rath Yatra, from Hyde Park all the way to Trafalgar Square. Prabhupada didn't stop dancing. He danced the whole route. I mean, I've done it a few times. It's quite exhausting. Prabhupada did it. And he sold books. Whatever opportunity Prabhupada got, he sold books. When he was getting down from the Jaladuta and going to step onto the harbor at New York, they'd already gone through all the customs and immigration in Boston. They only stopped in Boston for a few hours. Prabhupada's destination was New York. Prabhupada got back. He walked around Boston just to get his bearings and to stretch his legs. Got back on the ship. They went to New York. Prabhupada arrived in New York, and Captain Pandya, who was the captain of the Jaladuta, Prabhupada said to him, "So, Captain, I don't have a single penny, not a single dollar. I have 70 rupees in my pocket. What can I do with 70 rupees in this country? Can you kindly buy a set of my books?" And he sold a set. Captain Pandya said, "How much is the set?" Prabhupada said, $16. Captain Pandya gave Prabhupada $20. That was his first sale. That was his first sale. Prabhupada lived on his books. He sold the books wherever he went. That's what his income was for the whole time he was in New York before he made a single disciple. Book sales. Prabhupada did it himself. So he set the example, yad yada charati shrestha. So Lord Krishna, as Prabhupada is describing here in this purport, that when he was in Dwarka, he gave the example. Look at the way in which he worshipped Sudama Vipra. Gave him the greatest respect, washed his feet. Not only washed his feet, he put the water from the washing of his feet on his own head and on Rukmini's head. And the goddess of fortune And then he took the chipped rice from Sudama and ate it raw, chipped rice. And the goddess of fortune had to stop him. Said, "No, you can't eat any more. If you eat any more, he'll have everything. You'll have such a great debt." This is Sudama, who had nothing. But it was the love, the loving reciprocation. That's what Krishna wants. The loving reciprocation. Not the big title, not the big position. When he would go to the Dhritarashtra's palace, who would he eat with? He would eat with Vidura. Simple food. Duryodhana would invite, cook him a 300 course feast. No, he didn't want that. He wanted to eat with Vidura. Simple food. Vidura had practically no position. He was thrown out of the palace by Duryodhana. So Krishna is not interested in the big title, the big position, the prestige, whatever it may be. Krishna is interested in our heart. What is in our heart? Where is that loving reciprocation? This is what Krishna wants. This is what Krishna craves. He craves this loving reciprocation. That is there in all of us. We just have to fan the flame and allow it to manifest. If we do that, the process is simple. Just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Take a little prasadam. As Prabhupada said, take a little rest when you're tired. Everything else just falls into place. It's a piece of cake. I'll finish there. We've got a few minutes left. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Appreciate everybody who has joined us. Thank you very much. And it's wonderful to see that these classes go on. And thanks to Kirtika Mataji, they're going on every day. It's even when she's not there, they're still going on. See how much Shakti she has. Everybody is appointed to do their little bit. So we also have to do our little bit and spread this far and wide so everybody can embrace Krishna consciousness. There is no other way. There is no, the world is in a mess. There is no other way. Kalo nashteva, 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 gataranyata. Literally, there is no other way. We have to take this on board. We have to start putting the culture into practice. We have to really get to grips with this Varn ashram and really set the example so other people are craving for it. They need it. There is no example. There is no example anywhere for anybody to follow. They think we're some esoteric group living in the temple, ringing bells, and they see us occasionally on the street chanting. And they say, well, yeah, Hare Krishna, whatever. But what's the philosophy behind it? People haven't got a clue. We really have to step up to the mark and do our best and push it on as much as possible. We have a great responsibility. Now we could say, I don't want to be presumptuous, we could say in a way, okay, we've been saved. We have it. We have the philosophy. We have the holy name. We have the books. We have everything. We have the whole history of the movement and everything like that. That's great. Let's just go that extra mile and just try to do that little bit more. We can do it. Just depend on Krishna. It works. It worked for us. Why should it not work for others? What are we doubting? What are we afraid of? What am I afraid of? I have to ask myself. I'm not preaching to you. I'm preaching to myself. So thank you very much. Very grateful. Thank you for listening. Haribol.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this very powerful class. Like last time, when you said we should attentively chant, and I also did the offense that you said that we might be doing that. I used to chant Rama Rama instead of Rama Rama. So, so thank you. Just like that, another powerful class on what are we doing. And Srila Prabhupada did so much for us. I mean, even if we do one thing that he did, just a small bit, we would make the world a better place. So thank you for this fantastic, powerful class. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Mansi Ganga Mataji and Ian Parth Prabhu, who are on this, who are the mentors of this group, and they have joined us to give us support and increase our spiritual credits. And there are some new devotees who have joined today. I think they have left, so next time we should acknowledge them in the beginning. There was a Dr. Purvi Vekaria, and there was some Mishan. Hansa Mataji has rejoined again, and even Rovin Prabhuji. So thank you very much for joining in and really honoring this class. So let's go. I know we have 2 more minutes. Any questions for today? Or comments? Hare Krishna, any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Pranam.
Yes.
Hi, Haribol.
Thank you so much for Prabhu for the wonderful class and as usual. And then Prabhupada's, you touched so much about Prabhupada's Leela and Prabhupada's potencies, and my hair started raising. Then when you told that the man, he lost the manuscript of Bhagavad Gita and he had to redo it again. We are unable to read it on a regular basis and complete it, and then he had to rewrite it, and then it is really amazing to hear the glories of Prabhupada again and again. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Any other questions or comments? Wonderful class and instructions, says Ananda Das Prabhu. I hand over to Parth Prabhu. We have exhausted our time. Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your nice and wonderful class. We
Haribol.
really appreciate you are touching the Prabhupada's Lilamrita and the disciples at that time. So we are so relishing that subject and that the pastimes of Prabhupada and his great devotees. So thank you very much for your class. Also, thanks all the devotees who are joining here in every day, in regular, and paying their attention and joining here. So thanks all the devotees. So I request all the devotees, please unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna mantra for glorification of His grace, Vidura Prabhuji.
Jai.
Please join. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Hari Bol.
All glory. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the
Krishna,
lovely
Prabhuji.
class.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuji.
you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Haribol. Haribol.
Thank you.